Hello and good day, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, brothers and sisters of Zion. Um, this video is about, it's like part two to the last one, kind of. Um, it's about, does the New Testament reinforce, mention the dietary laws? Does it reinforce them? Does it mention them at all? Does it reiterate them? Um, and so, I want to take you to a couple verses in which I think it actually does reiterate some of them to some extent. Um, let's go to Matthew's 3. I'm sorry, 13 verses 47 to 52.
Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet that was cast into the sea, and gathered some of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore, and they sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but threw the bad away.
Oh, there's more?
Mhm.
Okay.
So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come forth, separate the wicked from among the just, and cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Jesus said to them, "Have you understood all these things?"
Okay, so in this parable, Jesus is telling them, um, he's letting them know that the kingdom of heaven is like a giant net that goes down into the sea and gathers all types of sea creatures. And when you pull all these sea creatures out, the fishermen in those days in Israel, um, they pull them all out and they'll keep the good and get rid of the bad. So what is this good and bad amongst the sea creatures that he's referring to? Well, if you go back to the dietary laws, when it comes to sea creatures, what's good for consumption has to have scales and fins, and what's bad for consumption is everything else. So he's saying that the fishermen are keeping the good and getting rid of the bad. So either keeping the clean fish and getting rid of the unclean um, fish or sea creatures. So they're getting rid of crab, they're getting rid of lobster, they're getting rid of shrimp, they're getting rid of catfish. These um, sea creatures, these animals from the sea, uh, so-called fish, are unclean. Um, and the only ones that are keeping are the good ones or the clean ones. So this right here, this little parable that Yeshua told, um, is reinforcing the dietary laws concerning fish from Leviticus 11. Um, but then he also takes it a step further, and he equates it to his second coming, and he says when it's time to separate the righteous from the wicked, it's going to be like that. Everybody's going to get gathered in one area, and he's going to keep the righteous. He's going to keep the clean, and he's going to get rid of the bad, the unclean. The righteous will be the clean, and the wicked will be the bad or the unclean. And so, not only does dietary laws concerning fish still exist, but they kind of foretell what it's going to be like at the end of the age when he returns. So they still exist then, and they're going to continue to exist and be relevant clear till the time when he returns. Is what that is alluding to. Um, let's go to Acts chapter 10, verse 9 through 16. Let's see what this one has to say to us.
The next day, as they went on their journey and drew near the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and saw heaven open, and an object like a great sheet bound at the four corners, descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, No, not so, Lord, for eaten anything common. I have never eaten anything common or unclean. And a voice spoke to him again the second time, What God has cleansed you must not call common. This was done 3 times, and the object was taken up into heaven again.
So in this scenario, Peter was hungry and fell asleep. Then he had a vision or a dream, and in this uh, dream or vision, he saw a net that was tied up at the four corners of it. It was full of animals um, of all types. Um, ones that crawled, ones that walked on 4 legs, on all fours, birds of the air, and a voice told him to kill and eat, and he said, No, no, I can't kill and eat because I haven't ever eaten anything unclean. I'm not about to do it now. Now, if Messiah, if Yeshua had declared all foods clean, um, a few chapters, no, earlier in the gospel, before, because right now, Yeshua was dead, buried, and resurrected. If he had prior made all foods clean, this vision would not have its same um, validity. Peter wouldn't even be able to say these words because um, these animals would have been not considered unclean. But because they were still unclean, but because they were still unclean, um, Peter was able to say this. He was able to say, "No, I can't eat this stuff. I've never had anything unclean touch my lips." And then the voice says, "Don't call what I have made clean unclean." So now the voice is saying, "I made something clean, and you're not to call it unclean." And so after that, Peter woke up. Well, it happened 3 times, and then Peter woke up, and then he wondered what was the meaning of this. Well, when he found out what the meaning of it was about unclean people. It was about Gentiles, people who defile themselves with sin, people who are not underneath the law. And so God used unclean animals to send Peter a message about unclean people. And so what God was saying that was clean, that he made clean, was Cornelius. God had been working with Cornelius. He had brought him out of a lot of um, his ways. Cornelius had given a lot to the Jews of the time and was seeking um, to be close to the Jews and was looking to learn what they knew. So God had reached out to Cornelius through his spirit, through the spirit, and Cornelius had received this and was in a semi-relationship with God, coming out of his life of sin, trying to be brought out of his life of sin. And so while this is happening, God sends a message to Cornelius, go find Peter. I'm going to have him break it down to you. And so when he goes to find Peter, he is an unclean person trying to fellowship with someone who is clean, somebody who is underneath the law. He is not, Cornelius is not underneath the law, but he wants to learn from Peter, who God told him to look for, but who is also beneath the law. So this being the scenario, God needed to prepare Peter for this, or warn him about this, because he knew Peter wasn't just going to go to this Gentile's house without him first saying, yeah, go with him. And so the animals that were in that sheet needed to be unclean. They needed to be animals that Peter was going to reject, so they can correlate with the people that Peter would have also rejected. But then when the Lord said, I have prepared this, I have made it clean, don't call it unclean, and then he got the revelation of the dream, understanding that it was talking about people, then it all came together. But these animals have to be, if they were not unclean still, this dream would not have had the same meaning. It would not have been an issue for Peter to go and kill them and eat them. But at the end of the day, Peter understood, I can't eat these animals. This has to mean something different. And which was the case. It meant something different. It meant, God's been working with this man. He has pulled him out of the Gentiles, and he is seeking a relationship with the Lord and a relationship with the people. So you need to teach him and bring him into the into the fold. And so that's what happened. That's plain and simple. But at the end of the day, these two passages talking about the fish, the net taking up the fish and separating the good fish from the bad fish, well, you only have good fish and bad fish because of the dietary laws that he gave us in Leviticus. And that good fish and bad fish scenario, that points to the end times, which means good fish and bad fish will exist. Unclean fish and clean fish will exist until the end times. First. The second also, the Matthew 13, that also is a scripture that reinforces the dietary laws, because that whole dream wouldn't have the same significance had those animals been clean. Had he already made all foods clean, um, like people have falsely put into the scriptures, had that already had happened, that dream would not have had the same significance. But since it didn't happen, all food, all animals are not made clean, because if it's an unclean animal, it's not food. So all animals are not made clean. Um, never happened. Because of that, that dream still had the point that it was meant to have, and Peter understood and was able to take the meaning and correlate it with the people and uh, make it happen. And he went to the house and he ministered to the men, and they were baptized and they received the gift of tongues. Um, and at the end of the day, everybody was happy, but it was because the dietary law was still in full effect that that dream even was able to have the meaning that it had. On Peter, somebody who was rejecting the eating of the unclean animals that were in the basket. Um, so I think I'm gonna wrap that up right there. I may do another video on this topic. I'm not sure yet, but I hope you liked it. If you did like it, or just like it, share it and subscribe it, please. Um, and if you're feeling generous, my YouTube link will be. I'm sorry, I do that every time. Every time, my GoFundMe link will be at the bottom underneath this video. So please like, share, and subscribe. Um, and if you're feeling generous, please donate. Thank you. Have a good day. Shalom, um, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube.